All right, good afternoon, everyone, once again. Happy that you're here, and welcome to the session, preparing a program or course proposal at the UWI. During this session, we're gonna look at a couple of things and explore a couple things, and really at the basis of it is to understand the process, the proposal process, and really ensure that you meet or understand those requirements, the requirements therein, and thereby allow for a faster or more efficient proposal review and approval experience. All right. I was just saying that looking at the list, the participants list thus far, many of you are I'm quite familiar with some of you. So I'm happy to see that. And so some of you have experience in, or have had experience in this proposal review and approval process. Some of you are even going through it currently, and some of you will go through it subsequent to this session. And it is really our hope that this session will be useful in that regard, and really make it a more, I would like to say, enjoyable experience, the review process and so on. So let's start with a quick icebreaker. So, you know, I like to start with an icebreaker, right? So I'm just going to share this screen here. And what you're asked to do is basically solve a puzzle. Now, the whole thing about a course or program proposal, you know, and I see we have Professor Delisle and so on here, is that everything must connect, and that's what we call alignment. So in this puzzle, you will, and you could use your mics, we will put this puzzle together to come up with a cohesive picture. I don't know how many of you like pictures. No pop quiz. No, it's not a pop quiz. I think you like it. It's a jigsaw puzzle. All right, and here it is. So let's get straight into it. So I'm going to space out some of the parts for you, so you could probably identify them as, right? And so you can identify them as 1, 2, 3 on the right, 1, 2, 3 on the left, lower left, upper left. All right, sounds fair enough? All right, so you could tell me which piece to move to the center. Just making you. So no, Sahida, it's not a pop quiz. So any part, okay, right? Diana is on the right part, so we do the edges first. One on the top left should go to the center. Okay, top left, I'm assuming it's this one. I like the teamwork. All right, good. So, okay, good. The corner as well. Okay. So let me just shift things around. You actually, right, I'll move this here and I'll move this here for you. Yeah. Learning objective, bottom right. Okay. Should go, I'm assuming you're seeing here. All right, so you're on to a good start.
So Justin, the piece on the left was my left, the one that's a content modules, I think comes right on the description. This is an end as well.
I like your process. I'm just shifting this so it makes it easier to understand. All right, go right.
But I think the one that you just shifted comes under that as well, Justin. Not that one, the end. Okay, sorry. Yeah, but you could go ahead, Justin. You have to yourself, you like it.
Move the middle, the two that you have joined in the middle, move them down, go across. Yeah.
There we go, nice. Reference to content module, I'm seeing. Go ahead, I'm listening.
The one with references comes right on the content modules, I think.
Right, let's see. And you're absolutely correct. Let's drag this up a little more. Good.
The one on the center left goes next to references. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Yes.
And there we have it. Okay, this is pretty good. All right.
Basic design on the right.
Two on the.
Basic design on the right.
With next to elements. Next to elements.
Yeah.
I like the teamwork. All right, we're getting there.
A sequence of. Right.
B for basic on the left to the calendar bottom.
Which one is that? Sorry.
Sequence of B on the left.
Yeah.
Up on top next to basic design elements.
Okay.
And then general C attached to that.
I think I should have made this
Bring the calendar with the other, bring it to the middle. The calendar that's on the left.
That's the top.
This
card
one?
you can
Top,
bring.
Yeah.
Down? Yes,
Alright.
that's
Right.
right.
Yes.
Right.
With assessments next to
And
that.
assessment to
Next
this.
is assessment, and the next year is the next one, the last one. Good.
Yes.
There you go. You could give yourselves a round of applause. Mr. Mohammed, you could probably just put a little round of applause in the chat. Definitely a great job, everyone. And this is just a graphic of the basic elements that comprise a course or program review. And I like let me just say off the top of the bat that the approach you guys took. I like the collaborative effort, and it's just on a tangent here. It's something that you could use in your sessions, and it's another session that we will have coming up in the next suite of workshops and so on. We're going to bring back game-based learning, so that's one of the things that we'll be looking at in a more in-depth way. All right, no problem at all, Suan. I don't think you got that one in Cuttle. So, you know, I always like to explore these things. So, all right, so I didn't get to check the time that it took for everyone to do that particular activity. I think it was about just over 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, which isn't bad at all, So just to give you a synopsis, and I'm just realizing that neon green was probably not the best color to use, but okay. So this is a general sequence of basic program or course design elements when you're doing your proposal. So you're going to have obviously the title of the program and by extension the title of the course. One of the important things, among others, would be the mode of delivery, whether it's online, face-to-face, or blended. And I'll just say right off the bat here that once it's online or blended, it's going to be more or less the same process, but you're going to have additional, a couple additional steps with it. Not that I'm saying you should not go blended online, but it's just an addition to the normal face-to-face course proposal. Yeah. Of course, your course description, and I'll probably say this later on, but your course description is really just telling us what the course is about, not necessarily in detail, but at least generally explaining, okay, what are the general topics of the course, what is the course about, and especially what are the general assignments that comprise the course. Many of you who have submitted proposals to me, you would notice I would say something like that. So what are the general assessments that comprise the course? So meaning, is it 100% in course or there's a final exam entailed in it? So something to think about. The rationale, I'm sorry, I'm going in the other way. The rationale is, of course, is one part of it. Learning objectives or outcomes, modules, assessments, that's important. So what kinds of assessments, like I said, does the course comprise? The calendar, and then the references. So by the end of this particular session, this webinar, now it's an interactive webinar. So we're going to have some more activities, just what we did there along the way. So we're going to be able to identify the steps, the general steps in a course or program review process. We're going to look at the different components in the course design approval, and there's a template. So we're going to look at the official UWI template that is across the different campuses, used across the different campuses. Then we're going to design a course using, or at least in some parts, start designing a course using this template. and in the process, ensure that all components are aligned. Now, Mr. Mohammed will eventually share a link to the template, so everyone will have that template, because we will be incrementally developing that as we go on. So when you think of a program versus a course proposal, sometimes you may not, okay, so the course outline will comprise what we call just the course proposal. So you might have just a one-time, well, not a one-time course, but just a single course or a couple different courses that may be offered as electives, or just as, a course that may be a core course, but it's just one course, in a particular program. It may not necessarily mean that you are proposing an entirely new program. So the course outline is more or less the only thing you're going to need thus far. Stick a pin in that. The course outline is the main thing you're going to need in this regard. So if you're proposing a new course, you're going to use the template. In fact, Mr. Mohammed, you could probably share that template as we speak, so persons could see what I'm referring to. So because we're going to be working on this as we go along. So you're going to have the course outline or template, and Mr. Mohammed will share that link so everyone will have access to it. It is also accessible on the CETL webpage, but for your convenience and being the respectful participant in this particular session, we decided to give you it directly. So you could download that. It's in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. It's in the chat, and you can download it from the chat, sorry, and have it as your point of reference, because that's the official template that is recognized by the various entities, whether it's ACWAC, BUS, Graduate Studies. And let me just say this as well, the template, the course outline template for both graduate and undergraduate studies is the same. All right, so that's the course outline, the template for the course outline. All right, so just keep that in mind, even though you might see BUS or Board of Undergraduate Studies as part of the title, they use the same thing, both graduate and undergraduate programs. All right, so yes, if you're just proposing a new course or an amendment to a new course, an amendment to an existing course, or you want to update this course, if it's a single course or a few courses, then it's just the course outline. It's a course proposal, yeah? But then you have on the larger scale of things, or the more macro scale, where you have a program proposal. Now, a program proposal may be, let's say you're proposing a brand new or an amended or updated bachelor's degree program, or a diploma, graduate diploma, or an MSc, or MA, or MEd, or what have you. So in that case, it becomes a larger scale. And now the course outlines are a part of the program proposal, all right? Because a program comprises many different courses. So it's on a grander scale, let's say it like that. So whereas the course outline, right, the course proposal would just be the course outline for the most part. The program proposal, you're gonna have to submit a couple extra documents, additional documents with that, in addition to your course outlines. All right, so far so good? But note, yes,
sorry,
go ahead.
Justin.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, clear.
Yes, that is very good and clear, but I should have asked earlier when you mentioned modes of delivery, fully online, etc. Do we have the capacity to do fully online through my e-learning? That might be silly, but just want to verify.
No, always trust but verify. That's one of my principles. Yes, we do. What we've seen is, especially, I don't want to say we're out of a pandemic, but in this endemic phase, we've seen a lot more proposals coming in for programs to be delivered 100% online. And now the approval process remains the same, but in a case like that, you would have an additional document or documents to provide. And I will show you, well, I'll mention it later on, but even though I could probably talk about it, the quality assurance checklist for online, blended, or remote courses or programs. That is a document you'll have to complete in addition to the course outline if it's a course proposal, or in addition to the program documents if it's a program proposal.
Oh,
right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Quality assurance checklist.
Yes. And once it's identified as a fully online program, it's going to be reviewed by a couple lecture persons, for example, entities, I should say, and you'll see the list as I'm going to bring it up in just a bit.
All right. Okay.
The Office of Online Learning will be one of them, in addition to the CTL and so on and so on.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure, no problem.
Before you move on, Dr. Zephyrin, we have 2 questions in the chat. First one is, if you are just doing a new course, do you need to do a market demand survey?
Good question. Good question, Lisa. No, not necessarily. It's not on the scale of things. Let's say, I mean, it helps. Let me say it like this. It helps if you do a market demand survey or some sort of, even if it's not on the grand scale of a market demand survey, some sort of justification for this, for the addition of this course, for the creation of this course. Why is this course necessary? Yeah. So that would help, but it's not mandatory for a course proposal per se. It's definitely more necessary when it's a program proposal, because a program is, like I said, more on a macro scale and that sort of thing. So if it's a course, let's say it might be a course that is proposed as an elective to a program, you don't have to do any market research. Yeah. And yes, Lisa, yes, good point, Lisa. So Lisa has done, she spearheads a master's program. I think it's in strategic leadership and innovation, Lisa, if I remember correctly, because I did have to review that. So yes, that's an example of it. So Suan, you could definitely connect with Lisa, and she will help you with that as well. And Lisa's pretty good at it. Yeah, great. So, and of course, I'm all for, well, you guys, those who know me, you know, I'm all for building a community of practitioners. So that's good.
A raised hand as well.
Was there another question? I think you said there were 2 or no?
Yeah, so the other question came from Dr. Hutchinson. She said, if a course is being updated, do you just submit a cover memo with a justification and the updated course outline? Correct.
If it's just a course being updated. So for example, if it's you might want to amend the course assessments. We would need to see obviously need to see the course outline and maybe a bit of a justification for the amendments that are being made to the course. So for example, what we've seen between when we transitioned, between the times when we were in remote delivery and now, we've seen where alternative assessments or in-course assessments in some departments or in some fields, it proved to be much more effective. All right. And so they have taken action to make those changes more permanent. So you remember when we transitioned to remote delivery, the changes were temporary just for the sake of the pandemic. But now that we're in this endemic phase, many requests have been put forward to make some of those temporary changes permanent. All right.
Okay, we have a raised hand as well.
Sure. Go right ahead.
Hi, Justin.
Hi, Alvin. How are you?
Electrical. Well, all right, very well.
Nice, nice.
I have a question here about page 7 on the document where you're talking about the checklist for submission of proposals for online and blended courses. And I see under point 1, program development and delivery, it says evidence of consultation with online instructional designers, educational technologists, etc., etc.
Yes.
Who would this be?
That would be anyone from the CTL, the OOL.
So given that you all are a very small group of people servicing the entire campus, what would the timelines look like for getting things approved?
Right. So if it varies from on a case by case basis. So for example, one of the variables that would affect that would be the number of proposals we have at any given time, the efficiency of the feedback that is done. So I'm just saying here, so let's say if I'm doing a course review and I give feedback, sometimes it might take a while for me to get back for the person to resend the amended version. Or sometimes the person may not quite understand. Now, normally when I get feedback, it's detailed, but in some cases, the lecturer or proposer may, and I'm trying to be diplomatic, might get a little defensive. But you see, when you're doing that, it gets a bit, it makes the process a little longer. You know what I'm saying? So usually we don't recommend changes on our end to the content per se, because you're the content specialist. But what we look at would be things like course structure, well, if it's a course proposal. Thank you, Lisa. And that sort of thing. And sometimes we will even have a consultation, a short consultation, to expedite the process. But I think it's a two-way, you know, they say two hands are needed to clap. So even when we give feedback, sometimes it might take a while, admittedly so, if there are a lot of proposals in the queue. But once you get that feedback, and if the turnaround time is about roughly 24 hours, we at least I try to get that done, because the goal is to kind of get these proposals out in a timely fashion.
Yeah. You know? So like if you have to give like a sort of upper limit, the reason I'm asking is, as you know, engineering is going through program review for probably all of its departments, and we have to do this to meet accreditation. So coming up, I have 4 coming up next year. So you really need to pin down timelines. So if in the documentation or in the process, you all could actually put in some sort of upper limit for timelines, that would be very good for us in the planning of our documentation rollout.
Sure. Let me say this, let me give a range. It could go from 1 week, right? Or even sometimes a couple of days, depending. But let's say roughly 1 week to, what's the longest I've seen, boy? The extreme and very rare cases would be the upper limit to almost a year. And that's not necessarily the fault on our end. It might be more specifically on the department. They were going through some changes at that particular time or during that year. So you had different persons proposing, coordinating the proposal. So that was one thing. And then of course there was a lack of communication and so on and so on and so on. So you had persons who were going on leave and who were, you know, so it lent for a very pedantic process, unnecessarily so perhaps, but and I think that in that instance, I think there was a bit of a back and forth in terms of the faculty not understanding, when I say faculty, the lecturers not understanding why certain changes need to be made, and you know, that defensive part of it. And I understand that perfectly well, because you know, this is your specialized area. But you know, just be mindful that when we give feedback, it's not necessarily to infringe upon your expertise or knowledge. It's really just to kind of ensure that you go through the process in a very smooth way without many hiccups. Because you don't want, when you go to ACWAC or grad studies, that they don't approve it. Yeah. So we try to do it with the end in mind. So I would say, on average, however, it would go from, let's say, a week or 2 weeks to about a month, roughly speaking, if the amendments are done fairly quickly. In your case, Arvin, well, I know we have a special arrangement, so I guess we will talk after. So, all right. So nice. Yes, but you'll find a lot of what we do today would also be implemented in that aspect as well. All right.
All right. Nice.
Yeah. All right, so, and thank you for that, Mr. Mohammed, with regard to downloading of the document. And just keep an eye on that, please. Thank you so much. So whether it's a program outline, a program proposal or course proposal, the review process is more or less the same. It goes through the same process, in other words. If it's online or blended, however, there are a couple different documents that might be needed and so on, as I mentioned earlier. But they generally go through the same process. They're reviewed roughly by the same entities as we see here. If it's undergraduate, of course, it will go through BUS and ACWAC. If it's a graduate program, it would go through the Office of Graduate Studies and so on, and research. But at the very least, it must go through the faculty boards. All right, and of course, the faculty boards may comprise of heads of department, the deans, etc., etc. Additionally, there are other entities that will review the proposal, including obviously the CETL. Now, let me just specify what each entity, well, some of the entities may look for or focus on. So the CETL may look at generally everything and pay even closer attention to any aspect. Well, everything would affect teaching and learning. But when it comes to the course outlines, especially, we are very particular or meticulous about those things. The weighting of it and all those sorts of things, all of those things will be in the course, in the course outlines, of course. And then even on a program level, we look at the structure of the program. Sometimes it might be the sequencing of the courses that comprise the program, the weighting, credit weighting, and so on. So we look at a lot. The library may look more specifically at the resources that are needed. So like the reading materials, the core texts, and those sorts of things. So they need to look at that and make sure that, look at those lists and make sure that the resources, that they are equipped with the resources. So when the course is being implemented, students have access to these resources, right? So it doesn't be a bumpy road when the course is being offered or the program is being offered. The bursary would look at more of the financial aspects, the teaching staff, administrative staff, and so on, and all the other resources and logistics and so on, to ensure that the course or program is delivered in a succinct and efficient way. Cross-campus committees would be, let's say, if a course is offered here, but it's also offered on the Mona campus, Five Islands, Capeville campus, or open campus. So there needs to be some sort of coordination because we're one university, but several different campuses. All right. And of course, the Office of Online Learning, otherwise known as the OOL, particularly if it's a blended or online course or program proposal. So I'm sorry for laughing, but I know this graphic is fairly it could seem confusing. Oh, what is the OOL looking at? Okay, so the OOL or Office of Online Learning, Arvin, may look specifically at well, once it's an online or blended offering or proposal, they would look at things similar to what the CETL would look at. So whether there's infrastructure for it, whether the faculty or persons that are facilitating the course or program, if they are trained, so that quality, that QA checklist specifically speaks to not just the CETL, but sometimes it might be a representative from the Open Campus or the Office of Online Learning. So, not a problem at all. So, Arvin, just to answer that addition to your question. So the CETL can look at it overall, in terms of whether it's an online face-to-face or blended program. But at the very least, you would need to notify the Office of Online Learning because they are a lot smaller than our CETL. So they would need to have some sort of notification, and you could just send them the proposal and just let them know that it's being reviewed by the CETL or whatnot. Or if it's after it's reviewed, you got the CETL approval, you might just want to notify the Office of Online Learning. All right. And the reason I'm saying that is, to make your proposal stronger when it goes to other entities such as ACWAC and BUS and so on. So you have all your boxes checked. Yeah. All right. So moving further. Yes, so
wait, Justin. Sorry, yes, Justin. Wait, I was just asking, but Lisa kind of answered. If you fall outside of a faculty like the IGDS,
Right, right.
What happens to us?
The approval process in terms of what?
In terms of the faculty board role.
Oh, so I think in a case like that, from what I've seen, to be quite honest, Suan, if the course is more aligned or is identified under, let's say, FSS or FHE, that is perfectly fine. So even if you once you identify that in your course outline proposal, we at least from the CTL stance, we are not too pedantic about that. But when it gets to ACWAC and so on, it might be part of the discussion or the deliberation.
So just one more question. So let's say we were doing something outside of we have a traditional association with social sciences and the humanities.
Right.
But let's say, because we have 2 minors with both.
Right.
But let's say we were collaborating with Faculty of Medical Sciences or Faculty of Science and Technology, and we're properly placed there. Is it that we would then go to Faculty of Science and Technology on the faculty board?
It would be whatever faculty is offering the program. Think of it like that. So yeah, so even though, let's say, IGDS might be coordinating the program, but
we offer postgrad and minors, but yes, I get your point.
Yeah, so whichever program is going to be documented as offering the program or course, then that would be, so for example, look at co-curricular courses that may be offered from, those courses wouldn't be offered from the Department of, DSSD, Student Services and so on. They would be offered through different faculties or departments that align more with what that course is about, so we'll be offering that course. So, and that goes in line, of course, with certification and all these different things, where the certificate will be issued from. Let's say if it's a course that it did and there's a certificate to be acquired, then that's how it would work. So in terms of if it's a department that is has a sort of in-betweenity, for lack of a better word.
We're regional and independent of the faculty.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for, right? Then you just think of it from whatever department or faculty is offering the program or course, and that's the program you would put on the because it will be understood as a collaborative effort. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I understand at the point of alignment.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem at all. And yes, Lisa, I think most of the resources are provided on the CTL website, but we'll provide that link as we get lower down into the further into this session. So this is part of the workflow. I didn't want to show you the whole thing just yet because I want to take it bit by bit because it's a bit it could seem very complicated. So I'll break it down for you. So we have and what we see here just at the faculty board level. So within the faculty or the department, we have the proposal being made and vetted and amended where necessary. So for example, Janique, you might have a proposal. I'm just saying it because I saw you posted in the chat. So you may come up with a proposal for a new course. That has to be sent to, or vetted within the faculty or most of the faculty. Or at a faculty level. So you might go through it with your head of department, the dean, at the faculty board meetings and so on. At that level, you may even see liaise with other campuses that may be offering a similar or the same course. Yeah. So you deal with all of that there. But then there's the next level where it goes to other entities such as the CETL, the library, the bursary, as I mentioned before. And it's always helpful, even though this graphic says you should send it to both at the same time, I would recommend, instead of going back and forth, that you resolve it at the faculty board level and then send it to the CTL and other entities. Because what you don't want is that the faculty board disagrees on something and there are some amendments to be made, but then the CTL already agreed or approved or disapproved of the proposal, and then you have some sort of conflict taking place there, and then you have to, clean up all of that. So once it's, and it shouldn't really, ideally, it should not go further beyond to the CTL and so on, until it's approved on the faculty level. All right. Once the CETL and other entities, the library, the bursary, and so on, they go through and approve and whatnot, then it goes to ACWAC, then eventually to BUS or the academic board. And then, of course, once approval is granted, it goes straight to BANA. So in this graphic, the second, right, so you would see at the first level where this arrow is pointing, you have the faculty level, think of it like that, the faculty level. And then once approval is, or they all agree, okay, the faculty decides, okay, this is the course that we would like and we're going forward with. Then you send it to the other entities, such as the CETL, the bursary, and so on. All right. And once approval, now during that process, it will go, sometimes it might be back and forth. If it's a really good proposal or there are hardly anything to amend, then, you know, usually it's just, it might be sent back to you once from the CETL, at least once, just to fix one or two minor things. And when I say minor, it's not that it's trivial, but it's something that needs to be addressed, but not difficult to fix. Yeah. Once you follow, at least if it's with me, once you follow the instructions, the comments that I provide and so on, it should be easy. But if you don't understand, you can always reach out to us and we will provide clarification where necessary. All right. But once approval is granted by the CETL and the other entities, then it goes to ACWAC, BUS, academic board, etc., etc. And then once they approve, then it can be offered. So in other words, it goes into BANA, students can register for it and enroll in the course. Yes, Sahida?
Hi, Justin.
Hi.
The last I saw of this, we did presentations, and this flowchart was, the intention was to send out to the different deans for presentation so that we can get some feedback as persons were going through the process. So you had mentioned a couple of things, but I didn't even know it actually was adopted. I'm very glad because I did 100 variations of the flowchart. Basically, we had a 3-person team with Sharon and Dr. Renwick.
Right.
It was really a treasure hunt. So one, I'm very satisfied. This is a personal victory for me. So I'm just but secondly, as persons use it, if there are any issues that are flagged, you know, arrows that, you know, should be removed or anything, you know, I'll be happy, you know, part of it as it's adjusted because I never got feedback after teams. So we did this for courses as well as programs, both self-financed and financed by the university.
Right.
4 versions together with what I imagine you probably have a complete list of documentation to with them and links where possible. So I'm happy, but there could be, as persons are going through it, little things that they find that a little buggy or need adjustment. I think at that point, yeah, they could be adjusted.
Definitely. Like I mentioned before, I think with this graphic, it says you could send the initial proposal to both the faculty board and to CETL and so on.
Yes.
But when that is done, like I mentioned, there might be a bit of back and forth and whatnot, and then the whole thing has to be recalled and, you know, so
correct.
Yes. So I think, like, for example, that arrow, that connection on the top might probably need to be amended. Yeah.
But I have the original. Should you require to do any adjustment on your end? Yes. I have all the color schemes and all of that could be adjusted. I just went through what I thought could make it easier. It was a very size coming down to program level. But yeah, so yeah, as you see those things, if we could flag them, then
definitely. I think what we could do is probably work. Well, we could definitely contact you and and we could, Mr. Mohammed, I don't know if you want to take the contact and we could have a meeting on that thereafter and then disseminate it or put it on our update our website with it and so on. All right.
Yeah, I'll be happy to help. And it's Sahida Mujaffer, so you can find me on the email system as well.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for helping with this graphic because it definitely helped to map out everything. I'm seeing a question from Dr. Hutchinson. We will get to see number 9 as well. Number 9, is number 9 missing? Oh, I think number 9 is just covered by the arrow, but number 9 would probably be the checklist. All right. that comes just before number 10 when it goes to the secretariat. All right, so definitely.
We have another raise hand.
Okay, yes, go ahead. Thank you for that, Mr. Horn. Rochelle?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
Yeah, the department works with the faculty. I'm trying to understand the approval that will be given by the faculty board. Is that approval on based on principle? Because if they approved it without it going through to settle first, and there's some issue settle has with it, it will have to come back to faculty board? Or
Yes,
it just goes,
so okay, good question, very good question. So, and maybe that's perhaps the reason for that arrow going back and forth at the top, but it doesn't have, let's say the CTL, okay, let me make it very simple. Once it's approved on the faculty board level, it goes to the CTL for approval and so on. If the CTL decides that, listen, there are some substantive amendments to be made and so on, you may bring these back to the faculty board, all right? Or once the CTL approves, you still carry back to the faculty board because the faculty board has to be kept in the loop with everything that's taken place. And I think that's why you see on the left side, the connection with number 6, the arrow at number 6, and going all the way down to the course being offered. Because the faculty has to be kept in the loop. Even though there's a proposer, the proposer or requester comes from, well, represents the faculty and the faculty board. So the initial proposal, and you see the final proposal, which is arrow number 2 to 3, yeah, on the graphic. So the initial proposal goes to the faculty board. Once it's approved on that level, it goes to the other entities to get to be reviewed and or approved. And along the way, let's say when the library approves, when the bursary approves, when the CTL approves, at each step of the way, you may update your faculty board towards the, on the progress of the proposal towards its approval. Yeah.
So is it possible then that we can have a sort of informal consultation with CTL?
Sure.
Before we go to the faculty board, so that we can make sure that coming out through to you in the official context, we won't have that much going back and
Yes,
forth.
that's actually what happens sometimes. And as Lisa is saying in the chat, the faculty board, the reason I was proposing it as well, the suggesting it, is that the faculty board may make recommendations that would improve the proposal. So when it gets to CTL, it's less of a back and forth there as well, or not just the CTL, but other entities. But by all means, even before you go to the faculty board, you could definitely reach out to us for any sort of consultation or guidance, just to take a quick look at it. And because persons have done that, and that's perfectly fine. So at least when it goes to the faculty board, they give their seal of approval, and then by the time it gets back to the CTL and officially, then we could take a look at it and so on. Yeah, but for a more seamless process, by all means, generally speaking, you want to get that approval from your faculty board or at the faculty level, and then go outside of the faculty. So you see the different tiers, right? You have the faculty level, then you have outside of the faculty, let's say on a campus level, and then you have on the university level, all right? Because I think Arvin asked a question earlier about ACWAC and BUS and so on and so on. Those are overarching entities that will do the final or the university level approvals in order for it to be offered by the university and so on. All right? Or what are they checking? They basically just check things. So in addition to noting the approvals from the sub-entities, they also look at things, let's say they may give suggestions that may not necessarily, okay, so let me break it down. So one, they may look at things such as whether approvals were granted by all the necessary entities. That's one. Sometimes they may note certain or pick up on certain things that were overlooked in the process, very minor things, but still things that need to be amended. And they would probably issue something like an approval pending X, Y, and Z. Yeah. They may also make suggestions regarding the title of the course or the offering of the course. So for example, if a proposal is being offered for a face-to-face course, but then they might, because they would know on a university level or campus level in some cases, what programs or courses are being offered similar to that proposal and what might be best, given the direction, the strategic direction and so on, the university. So they may suggest that, okay, this proposal could be offered as, this course or program could be offered as an online course. So those are the things that they note. And of course, they give the overall approval. But if there are things that, and it's also a vetting process. So if there are things that the CTL approved one version of the program or course proposal, and then you try to submit an alternative proposal to them, they pick up on that as well. And then of course, you have to start from square one. All right, so it's also a vetting process to ensure that the checks and balances are done. Yeah, that's what I said, approval pending changes. Yeah, so hopefully that clarifies. Yeah. All right, so some of the general program or course design elements, these are some of them, or generally speaking. And what I decided to do was to break them up into components for you. So you have on an administrative level, things such as the prerequisites, the credit weighting, the general things of the course. Things that would go, let's say, into the banner system, that would go into the university system, the enterprise system. So you need to determine how many credits comprise this course or program, the mode of delivery in some regard, that's also on a general administrative level. What prerequisites or level of the program, and when I say level, whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate, and the prerequisites, and you have, in addition to prerequisites, you have other variations of that. So for example, what courses students may need to do prior to, in order to be enrolled or be eligible for this particular course or program. So for example, do they need to complete an MSc in sociology before going to, complete a bachelor's degree or a minor in sociology before going into the sociology master's degree program? It's just a suggestion. Or the MEd program, do they need to, well, obviously have a degree in a particular field and then do have certain experiences? I think that in the MEd program or the DPED program, you need to be enrolled in it, well, be in the teaching service. So all of that is part of like what we call administrative information or administrative requirements. Then you have the pedagogical part of it. So you have things such as the learning outcomes, the content, the structure of the course, the teaching methods and so on, and the assessments that are also related to the learning objectives. So those sorts of things. And then you have, of course, the financial aspect of it pertaining to teaching staff, persons who would need to be employed or enrolled, I'm using that term loosely, to facilitate the course or the program, right? The equipment and technological infrastructure that may be necessary. So for example, in engineering, Arvin, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you may need certain software and programming infrastructure and so on for your particular programs and or courses. All right, so that is something that also needs to be taken into consideration. And of course, because you need to acquire these things, there need to be some maybe tendering process or, all of that comes under the financial aspect of a proposal. So we're gonna take it in those three phases, all right? The administrative information, of course, like I mentioned, these are some questions you wanna ask. Who is offering the course or program? And I think Suan mentioned it, well, we alluded to that earlier, whether it's from one department or a sort of interdepartmental or what was the word you said, Suan? Independent and
independent and regional.
And regional, there we go. All right, so, you know, where is this course or program, who's offering it, yeah? Who are the persons that can be enrolled in this course or program? Is it undergrad students? And even so, what level? Is it like something that can be done and if they can enroll in this course in a first year level, second year, third year, or at the graduate level? Yeah. Then the next thing, when will it be offered? Is it something that you see, let's say next year, September, or next year, January? Yeah. Then well, we know the project that we are working on. So you have your deadlines or your due dates, I should say, to work with. All right. Even if it's for accreditation, and this is generally speaking, whether it's for accreditation or even offering the program or course or what have you, you have dates that, due dates and so on that you need to work with. All right. You also need to consider whether it's if it's a core course, if it's a course proposal, if it's an elective or co-curricular course. So that's also an administrative thing that, as I mentioned before. And the credit weighting, we have a whole document breaking that down on a graduate and undergraduate level, and even for online versus face-to-face and blended. So there's a whole document that we will share as we go forward. All right. So if you look at the document that Mr. Mohammed shared, at the very top, you're going to have the general administrative information. So things such as the campus or faculty, the course code, well, proposed course code and title, which may change when it goes to ACWAC. So Arvin, this is one example of that. And one of the reasons it may change when it goes to ACWAC is to make it sometimes more, I don't want to say just attractive, but more applicable or appropriate, you know, because sometimes when you are focusing on the other detail aspects, the other details, sorry, of the course proposal, you're probably not going to come up with the most attractive or appropriate title. You're just going to put something there as temporary and that will stay as is. So those things you want to be mindful of. Then you have the prerequisites, for example, what do students need to do before enrolling in this course? All right, or what do students need to do while doing this course? I remember there was a point in time I was contemplating doing an MSc in sociology. And I think at that time, there was a suggestion that I do some, while being enrolled in that program, I don't know how it was going to work, but I complete some courses in sociology at the undergraduate level. So I don't know if they wanted me to complete the undergraduate courses, just about 3 or 4 courses at the undergraduate level, then enroll in the MSc. Yeah, so it's just something to consider. So those are different aspects that you want to be mindful of. Of course, like I mentioned, is it something that is a core course? Is it something that is an elective? Yeah, or offered as a co-curricular course, because you know you have co-curricular credits. All right. And then, of course, you must have some sort of projected enrollment. Now, this is where it gets, I wouldn't say a little tricky. It's really where you, how to say this, you want to make sure this matches or is tied to the financial projection, yeah, for the actual program. So, and of course, it must match so this administrative aspect, that projected enrollment, should be, it should level off or complement. Remember, I spoke about alignment earlier, so it should complement the financial projections that you hope this course or program would have. Yeah, so keep that in mind. The next aspect, well, of course, I just mentioned projected enrollment. So, for example, year 1, year 2, how many students you expect at any particular time if it's a program proposal or even a course proposal. All right. So in your so I don't know if you wanted to or break even. Yes, Michelle. So in the by all means, feel free to incrementally, because we will be doing that more so later down, but even now, you could put a working title. So I'll give you 1 minute or a couple seconds, 45 seconds to do that. To put, using the document that Mr. Mohammed provided, you can just put a course title, a working course title. Just for now, you will always come back to change it, that's perfectly fine. And then you're gonna put a semester and level, and maybe the prerequisites, because you would know the courses that might be required before in order to do this course. So take a couple minutes, well, a couple seconds, and think of a course that you would like to teach, or a course that you would like to amend, or even a brand new course that has never existed at the university and you would like to create this proposal for this course. So insert a course title. You don't have to put a course code for now. So you put a course title, and you can go ahead and put the level. So whether it's a graduate or undergraduate course, what semester it might be offered. All right. And at the very least, the prerequisites, what courses would students need to do in order to gain eligibility for this particular course? Yeah. And when you think of anti-requisites, that may pertain to, let's say, if a course is so similar to another course that it may not be, students do not have to do both courses for credit and so on. Yeah. All right. Arvin said our department made minor modifications to template which were approved by the previous head, right? Yes, you would have to use a new template. Yeah, that's the short answer is yes. In fact, I'm not sure when that was, but this template was implemented as recently as 2019. So I'm not sure when you got that particular template, but this is the official template. Yeah, and it did go through some changes, let's say during 2016, 2017, 2018 period. Right. So if it's nearly identical, just make the minor changes, right? Or you can copy and paste the information. I just think that might be a safer bet. Because if it is not in the right format, it's going to be sent back. All right. I think someone was saying, giving a question earlier. Should we be proposing a new course if we can find an anti? Okay, good question. Most times the anti-requisite is not, we don't get proposals with many with information there at all. Usually it's just a prerequisite. All right. But of course, there may be some instances, whether students could be exempted from certain courses or whatnot because it took a very similar course. So it helps in that regard that you could readily identify which courses would lend for or be in support of, let's say, an exemption. Yeah. Diane, is it possible to create a course that will be suitable for current students as an elective and also for graduates? Well, first of all, you'll have to separate them. So if it's something that is at the graduate level or at the postgraduate level, because that's how the system is set up. I'm not sure for co-curricular courses, however. All right, I'm not too sure about that, but definitely for the strictly academic courses, they are on a graduate or postgraduate. It must be either or. Now you may decide to use some of the same content. Of course, you're going to make changes to the assessments where necessary, because at the undergraduate level, it should not be at the difficulty of a postgraduate level and vice versa. So I would recommend, if you're doing that, make it as 2 proposals instead of 1. All right. And like I said, it's literally, you could just copy and paste the information and make some adjustments, let's say to the course calendar, assessments, etc., as we go further down. Okay, so by now you should have the title of your course, as well as the prerequisites, all right? And even an idea of the credits. And we'll get to credit rating in just a bit. So the next step is really the pedagogical content or information. So of course, we know pedagogy is all about, you know, the structure of the course, the delivery of the course, the content, the flow of the course, and all these other things. So it's all about teaching and learning. Of course, the CTL will look, this is one of the primary things that the CTL would look at. All right, now, at the very least, this is what the template, you would probably see this on the template. Would be nice to have a graduate template. We do not go to ACWAC for approval. Right, so Lisa, it's the same template. ACWAC, sorry, graduate and undergraduate use the same templates for the course proposal or outline. Yeah, so this template remains the same. So like I said it before, so you're gonna have the mode of delivery. So you could identify that on your working document right now, whether it's face-to-face, blended, or online. So if it's face-to-face, it's a brick and mortar, like students have to come physically to the campus and attend classes and so on. There's no online presence per se. If it's blended, then you have a bit of face-to-face. So let's say like a lot of what we're doing now, where you might have lectures on campus, but you also have activities online. You might have lab reports and lab work to be done face-to-face, but then lab reports might be submitted online, right? Or you might have lectures, some lectures online, but you have face-to-face, let's say rotations in the medical sciences. But if it's online, then everything takes place through My Learning and or Zoom, all right? Those are the 2 primary platforms that you're going to be using if it's an online program or course. If it's blended or online, you're definitely going to have to complete the QA checklist, all right? And I think Mr. Mohammed will send that in just a bit as we go a little further down. So I don't want to confuse you. So you could go ahead and tick on your working document, which is the outline, whether you want it face-to-face, blended, or online. If you envision this course as blended, face-to-face, or online. Thereafter, you're gonna give it a brief description. The description, you're gonna, now the description should really be just about 1 or 2 short paragraphs. It's almost like you're giving an idea of what this course is about. All right. The course is, let's say, for example, you may give a basic description that, yes, this course is blended or online or face-to-face or whatnot. It explores A, B, and C. It is structured into 2 parts. In the first half of the course, students will do A, B, and C. In the second half of the course, students will be exposed to X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Assessments. This course will be assessed by 100% formative or in-course assessments, including quizzes, presentations, etc. So that's just a general example there. and you see the guide that we have there. So it provides a brief description of the course, what it explores or what it introduces students to, what it covers, and also how it will be assessed. Very often we forget that part, how it will be assessed, because that is important. Yeah. That's very important. So you need to say, and you don't have to go into detail, but it's 50% this, but at least at the very least, if it's just, you know, explain, well, identify whether it's 100% in course or has a final exam. The rationale. So while you do that, let me give you a minute to type out, and it doesn't have to be too long at this point, just about 2 lines will be safe enough. So go ahead and provide a course description. Rochelle, in the meantime?
Yes, this is going back to a comment made in the chat, or a question made in the chat by Diane, I believe, regarding electives versus a grad course.
Right.
I have a challenge with it, and probably it's too basic an understanding I need to have for this, but if it's an elective at, let's say, a higher level, let's say level 3, right? Cannot the same content and even assessment levels be used for both? So I'm not talking about any, you know, electives typically are at the higher level undergrad. And can it not be the same for, let's say, first year postgrad? Just saying.
Right.
Or should they have different cognitive levels altogether?
Good question. I think you kind of answered it. They should have different cognitive levels, different skill sets, and so on. Because at the graduate level, remember what the average student will come with at the graduate level. They have completed, you know, an undergraduate degree, whereas at the undergraduate level, they only completed 2 years worth of courses if it's a year 3 course. So, and then there are certain parameters that you have to work with at the undergraduate level versus the postgraduate level. So let's say some assessments, let's say it's essays. You have a certain limit to the word count or word range for undergraduate level assessments. So for example, I think usually it's about 5 to 8,000 at the maximum, the upper part of it at the undergraduate level. But with the postgraduate level, that might be a lot more. Yeah. So that's one example of a change or a difference between the two. And Professor Delisle, who also, by the way, I don't mean to make you out Professor Delisle, Prof, but he's also a master in assessments. So, you know, very, very much respect his expertise and so on. So he's definitely right in terms of the national qualifications level. To be, you know, that would also help guide you in that regard. So yes, so by all means, you definitely want to make that distinction between graduate and undergraduate levels, because the competencies will be different, the knowledge base would be different. And one of the things that would tell you that would be the prerequisites.
But could you offer, sorry for
no, go ahead.
But could you offer as an elective, and I mean, you're not going to have the students do so many of them, but as an elective, some graduate courses, even at the undergraduate level, and could those be integrated into an existing undergrad program?
I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think it's possible given our parameters, but I wouldn't recommend it even on the level of if you were so look at it like this. If you are telling a student to do a graduate course,
it's an elective. It's an elective.
Yeah, it's an elective, but you're telling the undergraduate student to do an elective graduate course. Doesn't that put the undergraduate student at a disadvantage? Because if he's doing a graduate course, but he's at the undergraduate level, he's doing this along with other graduate students, that's first of all. And then the prerequisites, let's say the prerequisites for that course is that students should have done a degree in X, Y, and Z or related field. But this person doesn't even have a degree or completed a degree yet in that particular thing. Then it kind of, you know, does more harm than good. You get what I'm saying? So
I think we need to have a deeper discussion on this because there's existing practice. So so and it's not like multiple courses they're doing. I don't want it to be labored. It's just that when the issue came up there and answer given, I found it was okay. We have to discuss that offline.
Yeah, it's something worth exploring. But given the system that we have and the parameters that we have, the institutional part of it, because remember I just spoke about the administrative part, those are the things that we have to be guided by. Yeah. Diane is saying, what about the professional level, new information? Could you elaborate on that, Diane, please?
I can't believe you're actually making me talk. Trying to be quiet. All right. For example, okay, we have pharmacists who may have done a course, you know, they've graduated, they've done the information, right?
Right.
Also, the undergraduate students, they are also doing that information, but as an elective, you take it a little higher and you give additional information. So the graduates, the pharmacy graduates will not have had that information before. We want to use that course as, you know, something that they can add to their, you know, professional.
Right. Yes. So you're saying if that would count in terms of the
elective being the same as what you will offer, you know, somebody at that level. They're not necessarily, I don't know if you're considering someone who graduates to be at the postgraduate level, or is it that they have really signed up to do a postgraduate course? Right.
At the postgraduate level, conceptually, it's anyone who has completed an undergraduate degree, right?
Okay.
Whether they apply for graduate, I mean, that's also part of it, but the main thing is that they have a degree, and whether that the specification of that program or whatnot is another thing. But at least they have a degree. It's a graduate. They now completed a graduate level program. Yeah. So think of it like that. So even if, and of course, by extension, if they enroll in a graduate program, so they become a graduate student. But at the very least, someone who has done those things would be at a different level, not just in terms of credentials, but in terms of knowledge and expertise. And for those reasons, you would want to have it, you want to address them, make a distinction, let's say it like that, or just both as two separate proposals. Yes, Alvin?
Yeah, slightly different question. Since this section is all about the rationale and the goals and, you know, tying the course to the program and so on, and I guess our accreditation and so on as well, how do we fit in the foreign language mandate from the university here?
Right. So depending on the nature of your course, because there's another segment or section that deals with the distinctive UWI graduate. That is one part that you could bring it in. Well,
let me ask it a different way. Is there these rationales and goals and so on, do they exist for the university's decision? Like, I mean, I assume Settle was consulted in some way, since it is impacting all the programs. So does that exist somewhere so we could see what the rationale was so that we could fit it into our programs in like a more meaningful way?
Sure. If it's at the undergraduate level, you could look at the Board of Undergraduate Studies, their website, sorry, should have it. It may also be on the CTL website, and Mr. Marlowe will share that link with all the resources in that regard before the end of this session. But in terms of the rationale is really at this point for the course. Why is this course necessary? So is it, some of the examples of rationales I've seen, and which are very good, maybe that, okay, you notice that students may lack a particular skill when during certain parts of the program. And this course may help mitigate against that. Or this course would help.
That's exactly why I was asking in the context of the foreign language, because I can't, to me, it doesn't, like, I mean, it doesn't hit any of our accreditation or program outcomes, and I can't rationalize it within what our program is supposed to deliver.
And that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that you have to include everything. No, you can't squeeze everything into every course. So while one course may not be able to cater to that foreign language need or vision, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. If it fits in another course, it might, or an elective.
Well, I mean, the foreign language course is a course on its own, but I can't fit it into the program to say, well, why is this necessary in our program, or why do we need to deliver this within our program?
Right, but I'm saying if it's an elective, then it's not necessary. It's just something that is, you could.
But it's not an elective. It has been mandated by the university for all students.
For all students to do, not so?
Yeah.
Right. What I'm saying is that it may not necessarily fit into your program. Based on what you're saying, I'm trying to understand what you're saying still, but it seems that you're saying that if the university is saying that all students have to do a foreign language course or program or whatnot, that doesn't necessarily
they have essentially inserted a course into our program, but we can't tell how it actually fits into the program.
Right. And what I'm saying is that if from a program level, you might want to bring it into the distinctive UWI-graduate. So that from that aspect or perspective, you would take it from. You get what I'm saying? And if you look at the elements of the distinctive UWI-graduate.
But I mean, I don't think it fulfills any of that, but anyway, all right.
I know, right? But, and yes, Professor Delisle is saying from a multicultural context and so on, which is, of course, part of the whole global village and that sort of thing. But I understand what you're saying in terms of it doesn't fit in directly.
It seems like we just
like an add-on.
Inventing ideas to fit the course rather than fitting the course to the context. That's what it seems like to me. Like when we say possible rationale and so on, it seems like we have a course now and we have to struggle now to figure out, well, how could we make this fit and how could we justify it rather than say it, how to come up with a course to benefit the program.
Right.
So
yeah,
that has been our struggle in putting it in.
Yeah, and I agree with you, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just showing trying to explain the other side of, because I think you wanted to have an idea of why they would say that and so on as well. I'm just explaining that from their end, it may be they are looking more at the exemplary or model student. And that student should have some sort of competencies in a global context. And of course, language or foreign language is part of that, that skill set. Yeah. So but I totally understand what you're saying. It is almost like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And I understand that aspect of it as well. But I'm also explaining from the university's aspect or perspective as to why that such a mandate would be made. Yeah.
Well, if you all have any detailed resources on details on the decision, because we only saw like a one paragraph saying multilingual graduate, and that was it. So there's something more detailed than that. It would be good for us to get a hold of it. I've been trying to get a hold of that information, and nobody seems to have it.
Right. We will definitely.
You all could send me, I'd be very grateful.
Definitely, we will definitely try to acquire that information and provide you with the same. All right, no problem at all. So yes, so the rationale for the course, for whatever course that you may be proposing and or program, but in this case, we're going to talk about the course now, would be why the course is needed. Why is this course important? What purpose is this course serving? Now, the best or the strongest is like a justification for the course. Now, the strongest rationales tend to focus not just on the knowledge, but on the skill set. How does this course develop the knowledge and skills of the student? So what will this student, how does the student prepare how does this course prepare the student for the world of work or to thrive in the field or in a career in this particular field and so on? All right. to this end, you may even pull some field research. So let's say, research has shown that students, graduates from this program may be able to, they lack certain skills or whatnot needed in this X, Y, and Z field. This course helps to address that, and so on, and you justify it accordingly. All right. The goals or aims of the course, they're very general, very broad. All right. So whether it is to develop students' skills in whatever that might be, it doesn't have to be a very long goal. It could just be 2 sentences or even a point, a list. All right. Let me just look at the chat. I think the chat is quite active right now. I don't know, Mr. Mohammed, are you seeing the chat?
Yes, I am.
All right. Are there any questions, by the way, in the chat or no?
Persons making comments.
Okay.
I think the issue can also be with which courses slots, right? So just comments. Also interesting to see where we are willing to adopt. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good.
If I did miss anything, anybody who needs to bring their question to the forefront, just simply turn your mic on. Yeah. Right.
Definitely. And Arvin, I trust me, I understand what you're saying. But in any institution, you're going to have certain parameters and guidelines, and sometimes we have to be guided by those things. So no, just comments, Diane. Yes. All right. Okay. So, but we'll definitely get that information to you, Arvin, and the rest of persons in this particular session. And we will also try to make it available to the campus community on our website as well. Yeah. So we'll hook you up, man. Don't worry. All right. So course learning outcomes. This is a part where we see a lot of amendments to be made very often. So I want to take this time to go through the construction of measurable learning outcomes. Now, learning outcomes must be what we call measurable. They must be specific, yeah, conditional, or time-bound. So they must be smart. Now, there are certain tips that we have for learning outcomes, and I'll get to them in just a bit. So, like I said, we for any average course should have at least 6 to 8 learning outcomes. Anything more than 12 is probably going to be a bit much. All right. But on average, you're looking at 6 to 8 outcomes. Even if you have 5 outcomes, that's perfectly fine. All right. But learning outcomes, especially when you have, let's say, 5 to 8, you must have pulled from a range, and it must be broad. And when I say broad, in the sense that it must cover different levels or skill sets or knowledge base or attitudes. And let me explain what I mean by that. So you have the 3 different dimensions, if you want to call it that. You have what we call the cognitive. So it's really what students would know by the end of your course or program. So what do they know? And this speaks to like cognitive processes. So what have they learned? What have they, it's knowledge base. Then you have the affective. So how do they feel? Do they appreciate, or can they appraise or defend a particular thing, or explain the relevance of something? So the affective is that sort of emotional side of things. All right. So if I appreciate it, if I and how you know that a student appreciates something, well, they might be able to, like I said, appraise, defend, etc. Sahida?
Yes, Justin, a quick question on the first one, talking about the number of learning outcomes. If it would be based on the number of credits for that course, for example, if you have a 2-credit course or a 3-credit, do the number of learning outcomes vary with that?
Good question. I don't know if Professor Delisle might want to chime in here, But usually the learning outcomes, yes, you might want to consider the credit weighting, because it can't be, if it's a 4-credit course, I don't think you would want a 4-credit course and a 2-credit course to be on the same,
Correct.
not matching per se or uneven. But at the same time, the learning outcomes would be based on the rationale of the course, as well as the all that we see above here, the description, the rationale, of course, aims or goals. So look at what we have here between the goals and then the learning outcomes. The goals will be broad. Think of a funnel. The goals will be very broad, and the learning outcomes will be more specific. So in other words, the learning outcomes will be the micro scale ways in which the goal will be accomplished.
Right. Yeah, just out of it. Yes. And I can see, you see, the challenge I would have is that, yes, I can have 8 learning outcomes for a 2-credit course, and I can have 8 learning outcomes. So I just want to know if there was some sort of standard that we should.
Right. And keep in mind, because there are different things at variables at play, because you might have 6 learning outcomes, but they're all at a basic level. So, and you see when I go lower down that it would pertain, it's just on the level of explain, identify, list, but not necessarily create and analyze, and which would be more higher order.
Overarching.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would still need some help understanding those, because I struggle with how detailed the learning outcomes should be.
Yes. And well, I guess you're in the right time, you're in the right space at the right time. So
correct.
So we're going to go into that in just a bit. So so I just wanted to identify the different domains of learning. So we looked at the cognitive, we looked at the affective, and now we have the psychomotor. So this is like skills based. What are students going to be able to do? All right. So whether they're going to be able to analyze X, Y, and Z, create something, those sorts of things. All right. So at the end of your program or course proposal, whatever goals and so on you might have for your proposal, you want to focus on these 3 main questions, which are built on the 3 domains of learning. What do students know? What do students feel? And what can students do by the end of your course? All right. So always approach it with that in mind. So, and sometimes usually they overlap. So for example, if I can defend something, if I know something fairly well or intimately, then it allows me to defend it. You know what I mean? So I can, so that's bringing in the cognitive into the affective. So I feel strongly about this, so I can defend it. And then because I can defend it, well, that's an action. So what can I do? I can defend it. So you get what I'm saying, right? So your learning outcomes or objectives must be SMART. In other words, they must be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, like I mentioned before. So let's wind down to get to the nitty-gritty of it, because once your learning outcomes are strong, they kind of inform everything else in your course or program proposal. So you have different levels of thinking, and some of you may know this already. I remember I mentioned earlier that you have at the basic level of understanding and remembering, so students will be able to identify, list, explain. But then if they can create, that's something that is much more complicated, is much more demanding, it's much more intricate. All right. So if I were to tell you to just repeat what I said, then you might be able to do that. You could recall facts, for example. But if I told you to create a learning outcome, that would take you to a whole new level. Then I definitely know the level of thinking is much higher. All right. So you want to aim for that. So, and this is just another way of saying it, basically, with some keywords. So look at what we have here. At the basic level, we have list, find, under remembering, of course, list, find, name, identify, locate. So just what I was saying before. Then you have just higher than that. So you could remember something and not understand it. Yeah. So at the level of understanding, are you able to summarize something? So for example, by the end of this course, students will be able to discuss A, B, and C. At the end of this course, students will be able to use principles in accounting for the projection or planning of a project, right? So you see where it gets higher and higher and more complicated. So design and build, of course, this is something, once you're able to create on that level, then it's at one of the upper ends of thinking. So some tips. You want to start with a handle. So by the end of the session, which you already have in the course outline, proposed template I gave, start with the handle. By the end of this session, you will be able to, all right? Good question, Arvin, because sometimes and that's what I'm getting at. So you want to make sure you're learning, the verbs that you use in your learning outcomes are measurable. So if you're going to say memorize, I would probably suggest something more specific. Right. So, but I'm saying that you probably want something more specific. So let's say you want to put, because memorize is good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. But I'm saying you want something more, you probably would want something more specific. So how would you know that a student memorized, or what evidence will you have? And that's what, so the verb in the learning outcome, it must be not just measurable, but it must be observable. Yeah. So how will I know that you memorized something? How would you show me that you memorized? Right, so recall or list, there we go. So you see what I'm saying, right? Define definitions or define X, Y, and Z, right? So you're kind of getting where I'm coming from. So you want to have a measurable verb, and the verb is measurable because it's observable. So you're able to see it, you're able to observe the student doing that. So something like understand A, B, and C, that's not measurable. Or memorize A, B, and C, it's a little more specific, but not quite hitting the mark. Even something like demonstrate understanding is still very vague. All right, so you want to be very specific. Remember, I showed in the previous graphic that your learning outcomes must be very specific, almost unmistakable that this is what you're looking for, or this is what the student needs to do. So I know that that student has acquired that knowledge or has developed that skill, right? You also want to have one verb per learning outcome. So you're not going to put assess and demonstrate, it's assess. Or demonstrate the principles of A, B, and C. All right, so there are different ways. So let me get quickly to some examples. So look at these examples here. List the steps in embedding a video within a Microsoft presentation. So you notice that first one, it's list, just as you said, Arvin. The second one, use SPSS in an Excel spreadsheet. So we see there in both first and second, all three objectives or examples, we see some of the tips I was giving earlier or guidelines where one verb, notice it goes through different levels. So you have at the very basic level list, then it goes to use, then it goes to create. All right. Because when you have multiple objectives or learning outcomes, you want to make sure you pull from a range, not just all at the basic level of explain. All right. And it also has certain conditions. So list the steps in embedding a video. It could have stopped there, but look at the condition within a Microsoft presentation, because you could embed a video in a website and a thing, you could do, but it's very specific. All right. And Mr. Mohammed just placed a resource learning outcomes generator. So, right. So you could use that as a guide for you as well. So steps in creating a learning outcome or objective. You already have the handle there, so you don't have to do that. Your thing is really just inserting the measurable verb or observable verb. Sure.
Yeah, just on the previous slide. So when you have like list the steps within a Microsoft presentation, one of the things we have been actually trying to do is generalize that part a little bit. So, and the reason for that is because software might change, or methods might change. So although the goal is still the same, we might just say use something like using standard analysis technique. So that standard technique might change as the field changes, but we wouldn't have to redefine the outcome. Is that okay?
That's perfect. That's even more exemplary. Now, this was done, this learning outcome was taken or created within the context of a Microsoft training course. Yeah, but in your case, you would know but I want to say parameters again, but you would know how far it could go, how general you could go.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because we just finished doing that across the whole program.
Oh, no, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. Because you see what you want to do. You don't want to have to do this and then do it again next year when something changes.
Exactly. So that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. Yeah,
right.
good.
So you're on the right track. You're on the right track. All right. So I did it as a formula. Now, mathematics wasn't my thing back in the day, but I'm sure people like Arvin and other engineers and so on would like this. So the formula is really the handle, which has already been provided for you in the template. So it's handle plus verb plus time plus context equates to a learning outcome, a measurable, exemplary learning outcome. So what is the handle? By the end of this course, Letitia, yes. Yeah, very good. I'm happy to see that. So, because it's one way I kind of appropriated it when learning it as well. And over the years, it's just, right? So by the end of this course or module, participants will be able to, and that's your handle, then the verb, and now the blurb on top kind of explains the formula. You insert your verb, so whether it's identify, create, assess, etc. Time will be by whatnot, and the specific time is, you have a little leeway or flexibility with that, likewise with the context. All right, but you definitely need the handle, the verb, and some general condition or context to create a measurable or exemplary learning outcome. So I created a little bit of a game before we go to create our own learning outcomes. All right, so here are some of them. So what you're going to do is you could let us know, maybe put a thumbs up or thumbs down, or you could use your mics. You're going to assess the following learning objectives. So by the end of, so we see the handle, by the end of this module course, participants will be able to identify the steps in a Word document to a PDF. Is this measurable or not? Or exemplary or not exemplary? Oh, it's a silence, boy. Wow.
How are they going to identify?
You could put your mic on, or you can oh, I'm seeing the how do we measure identify?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're saying that you prefer, right, outline versus identify. Well, you're actually correct, Arvin.
To me.
Yeah, you're actually correct. Identify is good because it's observable. So if I'm able to identify something, then you can see me identify. So in other words, identify is on the same level as list. Yes, Ada.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Yeah, so it's measurable. So think of it once, when I say measurable is almost synonymous with observable. So if I identify something as a student in your course, then you know it's good, or it's measurable. And Suan said it looks good, but Suan, you said that after the answer was revealed there, but okay. All right, the next objective. By the end of this course or module, participants will be able to understand the consequences of formatting a flash drive. Is this measurable or not?
No.
No? All right, okay. Most persons are saying no, and Mr. Mohammed is placing the taxonomy on image. So let's see. You are absolutely correct. No. Why is it not measurable or exemplary? Anybody?
How do you measure understanding?
How do you measure understanding?
Correct. Understanding is vague. All right. And likewise, demonstrate understanding is just as vague. So we don't want to see that in your proposals. All right. So, but you know that understanding has taken place because understanding is abstract. Think of it like that. It's too abstract to be measured. It's not observable. But how do you know that the student understands, to use the term? How do you know that learning has taken place? Well, the student should be able to do something, whether it's build something, create something, list something, identify something. All right. Okay, list the main actions that, by the end of this modular course, participants will be able to list the main actions that individuals can take in securing their cyber safety. Michelle said, a list of verbs not to use. Well, understand is one of them. Appreciate is another one, I believe. Demonstrate understanding is another one. So that should help you. But you know, in this field, we don't tell you what not to do. We try to tell you what to do. So it sounds like a dictatorship, right? But we provide guidance by telling you exactly what to do. So you could be guided accordingly. So is this a measurable learning outcome or not? Right, cyber safety is broad. Okay, true. Okay, fair enough. But do you think it's still measurable? Even if, right, Yvonne is saying yes, and you're absolutely correct, Yvonne, because it is measurable. And even though the cyber safety part of it could be a little more specific, perhaps, you know, and you might want to add context to securing their cyber safety in a X, Y, and Z environment. But list, and right, Virginia is saying listing of actions, that's measurable. Very good, excellent. Next, by the end of this modular course, participants will be able to describe and assess the main components of the hydrological cycle. Is this measurable or not? Right, excellent, 2 verbs. So it's inaccurate, it's incorrect. All right, remember you can only have 1 verb, because if this is not measurable, because the student might be able to describe but not assess, or assess and not describe.
Okay.
You want to, yeah, so you want to make sure it's, you know, that there are no loopholes. And thank you again, Mr. Mohammed. He placed a link with some verbs to avoid. All right. So Rochelle, you're lucky. All right, here's another one. By the end of this modular course, participants will be able to create a balanced dietary plan. Right. Okay. Good, excellent. You're absolutely correct. Create a balanced dietary plan, even though there could be more conditions or more specifications with dietary plan in a medical context or something, but that's optional. The main thing is that they create a balanced dietary plan, right? We'll do that, Lisa. All right. All right, so here's a sample of what some persons have done before. We see here the distinct UWI graduate, the outcomes there. So look, and I think this relates to the discussion before with Arvin. Globally aware and well-grounded in his or her regional identity, or socially, culturally, and environmentally responsible. So all of that, of course, language is part of culture and so on. So it doesn't necessarily, I'm not disagreeing with you again, let's just clarify that. But it's just something to be mindful of. So it doesn't have to be that it's overtly stated in your particular program or course, but at least there is consideration where that is considered. But more specifically, I want to draw your attention to the learning outcomes. Notice here we have, look at the learning outcomes. Implement effective knowledge management systems in the innovation, planning, and decision-making processes. All right, let me read that again. Implement effective knowledge management systems in the innovation, planning, and decision-making processes. What do you think is the emphasis here in that first learning outcome?
Implement.
There we, all right. Implement. So think of it like this. When you're creating a learning outcome, think of it, what do you want the student to be able to do specifically? And stick to that, because you don't want that, because if the emphasis was somewhere else, then the person could have easily said, create and innovate a decision-making process, you know, something of that sort, or create a decision-making process for implementation in whatever context. But the process, the emphasis is really on implementing, not on creating that model. Looking further down at E, or even D, develop strategies for introducing new innovations onto the market or work environment. So we see it went from, let's look at B and then look at D, identify innovation. So that's at the basic levels, basic level. Then we have D, develop strategy. So that's all part of create. You get what I'm saying? So notice how this list of learning outcomes expands or encompasses a range of thinking orders or competencies. All right, so keep note of that. So I wanted to provide you with a little opportunity for you to create, just take about 2 minutes to create 3 learning. Can all this, I'm not sure what you mean by CLOs. Course learning outcomes.
Okay. Learning outcomes, yeah.
Be at a higher level. Yes, but it doesn't have to be at the same level. So even if it's a higher level, so you might want to look at create, analyze, and that sort of thing, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. All right. And of course, it would. I would like to think that would be based on the level of your
student.
Yeah, and the course or whatnot. So if the student is in year 3, you would expect that the student should be at a higher level and whatnot in various things. All right, so take just about a couple minutes, just 2 minutes or so to share, and we'll just go through maybe some examples that you may have created on your end. All right, 3 examples. You just create 3 learning outcomes, and we could share some ideas on whether it's measurable or how we can improve those learning outcomes. All right. So you could, the same working document that you have, remember we identified the course title, the credit weighting, the mode of delivery. We even went through the course description and rationale. And you're just going to put about 3 learning outcomes on that same working document. All right, so I'll give you a couple more seconds. Okay, so anyone wants to go and just tell us what you came up with? You could type it, or you could copy and paste it in the chat if you'd like, or you could just call it out first. All right, so we have Arvin said construct simple electric circuits on a breadboard. Okay, good. Use basic laboratory equipment to measure voltages and currents. Is there anything that you think we could do to amend that? Anyone who's seeing it in the chat?
I'd probably put measure voltages and currents using basic lab equipment.
Okay, right. Okay, I like that. So you switch it around. So Arvin, is the focus supposed to be on using laboratory equipment or measuring voltages? Using the lab equipment. All right, so if that is the case, then here's how I will tweak it for you. So I would say use basic laboratory equipment in measuring voltages and currents. Because remember what you have here will be, the way you have it stated is it comes across as 2 verbs in one learning outcome. To use and to measure, because it goes with the handle. So by the end of this workshop or the end of this course, students will be able to use basic laboratory equipment in measuring voltages and currents. Yeah, instead of to measure, because it would come across as 2 learning outcomes. Understood? Right. Going a little further, use standard CAD software to this. So same thing. So in designing simple mechanical parts. All right. Use standards in the design of a simple, right? So that one is good as well. But you probably want to instead of going use all the way through, you might probably want to switch it up a little bit. So integrate standard software, etc., or implement, or so break it up a bit. Yes. So you got it. Anybody else? Very quickly.
So Justin, so the issue here is like all of these things, like with the lab equipment, the CAD software, and the standards and so on. The use of them is only in those things, like in the measuring and so on. But we really want them to. The focus is on the tool itself in that case, because since it's a foundational skill for them. So the second verb is more descriptive rather than the outcome itself.
So you're saying that the emphasis is not so much on measuring voltages, it's really about using the equipment.
Yeah, but although it is, I mean,
it's important, yeah.
The idea is to measure the voltage, but specifically with that piece of equipment, because we want them to learn that piece of equipment. So you see that piece of equipment is a piece of equipment to measure voltages and currents.
Right. So you see how the way you're able to justify that it's a specific piece of equipment and whatnot, that's how we know that the emphasis is on, that's why it's placed first. Use basic laboratory equipment as opposed to mechanical or some other kind of equipment.
So it would be fine then for these, as you're saying, like in measuring, to just say in designing for the others.
Yeah, you could say in designing or in creating or using, because it depends on how you.
The design part there really gives the context of what the software or the tool is about.
But what I was saying is that you don't want to use, you see how you have so you have use basic laboratory, use standard software, use standard CAD. So I probably want to change it a little bit. So let's say integrate standard CAD software in designing so on. Or apply is another one. Apply standard software in simulating simple electric circuits, right? So those are ways in which, so it doesn't come across as everything is on one level and the student isn't really learning much per se.
Well, I mean, the way the program is structured, we have like these foundational skill courses, and then it builds. So different courses have different mixes. Some of them have more the higher end and very little in the lower end. Some
no, you could have all at the higher level, but to say you have all with the same verb is you don't want to do that. Yeah. All right. So you can have all from apply, analyze, etc. those ranges, but you want to use, at least I would recommend two different verbs instead of use all the time, because I think you had like 5 or 6 learning outcomes. So you could use apply, integrate, or implement as well. All right. All right, we have another batch here. What's that?
Dr. Zephyrin, is this acceptable? Design simple mechanical parts using CAD software?
Yes. Right. So the focus will still be on designing something using this software, right? Or designing something if that's the skill that you're looking for. All right. So design X, Y, and Z, or apply A, B, and C, or apply this software to, something of that sort. All right. Going a little further down, derive the whatever equation, because I know who this is, and I know it's going down a particular path that I'm not, that's beyond my expertise, but that's okay. From a conservation principle. This is good. I like this one. Apply the, how do you pronounce it? Navier-Stokes equation to simple channel flows, open and close, and to large scale. Okay, this is good as well. So notice that even though they have 2, as in that little thing, it's not to followed by a verb. So it's not to identify and so on. It's applied whatnot and whatnot to A, B, and C. Very good. Analyze geophysical flows using dimensional. Very good. This is good. Or your double. Okay, not a problem. But that's perfectly fine, Sahida. But you could give us one and we could help you if you'd like. Yvonne said, identify the role of nutrition in the prevention of prevailing childhood. Okay, good. Design health promotion messages promoting daily physical, etc., using behavior. Right. Okay, so this is actually a very detailed learning outcome. So the design health promotion messages. So it's very specific. Notice the conditions are very specific, which is not bad. Huh? I think it's pretty good. All right. I just think that promoting and using might seem like a little blue, but Prof. Delisle, what do you think? I don't know if if his mic is on, but I think it's fairly decent. But you probably want to, you know, between promoting and using, it seems a little. Perhaps we could say design health promotion messages. On daily physical activity, or design health promotion messages that promote daily physical activity using behavior change, etc. Yeah, something like that. Simply, right? Professor Delisle said simplify. Good. So thank you so much for that. I'm looking at the time. We just have a couple things, not too much, not too many things, just to go to cover. So I'm just asking if you don't mind, probably just about 5 minutes extra, so we can just wrap up thereafter. All right. Not a problem, Suan. All right. So very quickly. So tips for I call it the 4 Bs. Be learner centric. All right. Meaning that think of what the learners have to do or what they need to accomplish. Be specific. Make sure it's measurable. All right. In other words, you have to be very clear and specific. Don't leave any room for assumption and that sort of thing. Be open. When you're presenting the learning outcomes to participants, they need to know what they need to accomplish so they could paste. There's a whole bunch of literature on that and research. And that helps with motivation as they go through the learning process. And always be sure to recap the learning objectives once you've accomplished them. Teaching methods. I wouldn't play this video now, but of course you're going to get access to it, so that's not a problem. But you definitely want to cover, I don't think I have to go through too many things about teaching methods, whether it's collaborative, whether it's project-based, etc. All right. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Thank you so much for the link. All right, so very quickly, everyone. So I'm just showing you some samples and some guidelines that we have. With regard to calculating contact hours, there's a document with all of this, which will be provided for you. All right. And we will also, it's a link. Let me just see if I could put that link in here one time. Maybe I'll just wait until after. All right. So we'll send that to you subsequent to this session. And this is also part of it. So what this document would explain to you, would guide you in terms of how to, because there have been some queries about how do we calculate the credits within different modes of delivery. So this document, which we provide to you, is a example of that. And I wouldn't put the link now because there's the evaluation link in the chat. So I don't want it to conflict with that. So, but we'll send it to you after. Assessments. Now, even though we spend some time on learning outcomes, and there's a reason for that, they inform the entire flow of your course outline. All right. Now, you always want to make sure that there's alignment. And alignment is, when we say alignment, when we say alignment, we mean there must be cohesion. They must work together. So for example, your assessment item, let's say it's a quiz, it must be informed by the learning outcome. So how will this learning outcome be measured? So for example, Arvin, or let me go up a little further. Yvonne, you had identified the role of nutrition in the prevention of prevailing child obesity. How would you know that participants have, or students have accomplished that learning outcome? What would you do to ensure that so you know that they've done that?
All right, let me just go back up to it. Yeah. Identify the role of nutrition. Well, there are nutrition-based strategies. And when you facilitate this, this program, you would look at the various nutrition-based strategies to use in terms of reducing risk. So you can use risk reduction, okay? You can use health promotion. That is, you know, so there are strategies, and when you teach the course, you will teach it, and students will explore the operationalization of these various strategies.
Right.
And so if they have now to identify the role, they would look at, in terms of the risk-based strategies, they would reduce risk. Health promotion strategies, these go even before a child is obese, etc. This is promoting healthy development of children. And then there are other strategies in terms of management of children who are already obese. All right. And so they would know that from the teaching. So when you say identify the role, so the roles could be risk reduction, it could be health promotion, it could be treatment and management, etc.
Right. So what activity will you require students to complete for them to do just that?
The activity to complete to do just that. We've done a number of different activities here. We've had them design,
right?
And so they can design a health promotion intervention in a school-based setting.
Right.
Okay, so that would be one of the activities they can do.
Right.
They can facilitate. Well, again, it would be design. I don't want to use two verbs, so you're catching me out here.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so no.
So they can prepare a lesson or a talk for parents, for parents of children who are obese in terms of achieving a healthy weight.
I like
those kinds of things.
I like that. So basically, those activities that you identified are the assessments. They are the activities or the scenarios or the situations or the parameters or context within which students will show that they could identify the role of nutrition in the prevention of prevailing childhood obesity, which is your learning outcome there. So basically that's what the assessment, so you see the alignment between the two. So when you have your learning outcome, the next question is, how will students, what activity are you going to create for students to show that they could do
achieve that?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
All right.
So in other words, like if you were to get your driver's license, or if you for me to know that you could drive, well, there are different ways, but for the on a legal level, for me to know that you could drive, you would probably have to demonstrate, or you would have to do a driving test, correct? So in like manner, once your success in that test would let me know that, okay, Yvonne is able to navigate through tight spaces on a road, or is able to do a 3-point turn, right? So your learning outcomes and assessments must be aligned, all right?
Yes.
So very quickly, this is, of course, that previous part was just to let you see the learning outcomes and look at the assessments for the same sample. One of them is to design, to put them into working assignment one, as we see there. There's a working group. all right, where they identify an innovation or entrepreneur from Trinidad and Tobago, and so on and so on. And they even went so far to give other details, all right? And of course, a little breakdown of what they'll be looking for. So you see where I'm going with this, and it's linked, obviously, and you'll see the matrix to show that it's linked. So that's what this matrix is all about. It's a group presentation. They have 3 group presentations, all right? And it's linked to, the person linked it to different modules and or learning outcomes in their particular plan, course outline, sorry. All right. Let me go back a little bit. So you see it there, and you see the learning outcomes. All right. Okay, so the next thing is just the calendar, the course calendar. One of the things that you want to be mindful of the course calendar. Oh, I'm seeing, should assignments be tied to? Good question, Arvin. Learning outcomes can be, you just put MCQ or final exam, that's perfectly fine, that's okay. But you could probably put the number of MCQ items or MCQ, you know, give a little more detail. So we know that the weighting of the MCQ is appropriate, all right? But I think I saw your question a little earlier. If you can have more than an assignment item linked to more than one learning outcome, perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. That's actually how it should be.
But the question I have then is, if the assessments are linked to multiple LOs, how do you know the person passes the LO? Because they could fail the LO within the assessment.
Sorry, could you say that one over?
I said, so like take a final exam, for example, where you might have multiple LOs assessed. Somebody could fail one of the questions targeted at one LO, but pass the others. So they don't actually meet one LO, but the exam doesn't show it because they passed the exam.
Right. But if you do, but that's on a surface level. But if you do a more detailed item analysis, if you, let's say even in the MCQ in My Learning, the activity in My Learning, you could definitely see how many students failed a particular question if that question was targeted towards a specific learning outcome. And from there, you could make certain amendments or, you know, engage in some sort of.
So we can have a single exam then covering multiple LOs, and the person can then sub-fail the exam. So like they pass the exam, but they fail the course because they fail a particular LO within the exam. Like I don't think that banner could handle that.
No, what I'm saying is that it depends on how you design your assessments and how you align everything. So what I'm saying is that if you have two learning outcomes affiliated with a particular exam, and the student fails half of the exam or got 50% because they fail one entire question or however you design your thing. And let's say it's an in-course exam, you see on your end that most students have failed did not get that question correct. Right. All right. And now you have you're in a position where you can make amendments going forward. So you might want to do a revision session on that to recover, to recap or to reiterate some of the things so that learning outcome is accomplished. You might do so through a makeup exam. You might do so through a practice activity, because, you know, truth be told, you don't necessarily have to have a formal assessment to evaluate or assess a learning outcome. Yeah, it can also be done through informal assessment. So like a class activity, participation, and so on. So there are different ways you could navigate through it. And this is why we always lean more towards in-course assessments or formative assessments, because you're able to make changes and you're able to review and see what learning outcomes students are struggling with, as opposed to everything in a final exam. Yeah?
Yeah. No, but I'm just thinking, like, I mean, that means there will have to be, that's you talking about, they're like a continuous process of working until the LO is passed.
Not necessarily continuously working until the LO is passed, but if you do your reflective practice a little more detailed, you know exactly what may, and it depends on how you go about it too. You would know exactly how to identify the problem and how to address it.
But I mean, at some stage, you're going to have to give the students a mark. And at that stage, because you have to assess the LOs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is where, for me, it becomes a little bit difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the assessment covers multiple, then how you know whether they pass it or not? I mean, you could know if you go into the details, but they could pass the course not having passed the LOs.
Right. But
So,
then
so if you have like somewhere in the beginning and you do something, you know, it could continue going the same way as long as you have.
Well, here's one way to mitigate against that. If you have your final, say you're talking about in the context of a final exam, I would recommend in a case like that, that your final exam should almost function as a recap of most of the learning outcomes. But you don't want to wait until the end of the course and that to bank everything on that final exam. So I would recommend that you have in-course activities or assessments that would be targeted to specific learning outcomes along the way. So by the time the final exam is there, the final exam is just like a review of everything, right? So it might cover all or most of the learning outcomes.
So you have the detailed higher level coursework targeting the outcomes in the semester, and then you have more general final exam at the end.
And Professor Dalal is saying the same thing as well. All assessments are sampled, so they're not really meant to be, you know, the full-fledged thing. I know, Dr. Prof, you want to elaborate?
So I think the last comment would have been the best, that maybe if some outcomes are so important and you feel you're not catching it, then it's best to create a blueprint which will capture both the coursework and your final exam. So you're very confident that no matter if somebody fail a single something, that you've captured the major outcomes.
Exactly. Perfectly said. All right. I think that's the gist of it, because all learning outcomes may not have the same, I don't want to say importance, but weight. Weight. All right. So that's another way of taking it. All right. So very quickly, as we wrap up, the assessments and the calendar. Basically, in this calendar, we just look specifically for the different, the scheduling of different activities and assessments and so on in the course. So for example, if you have we recommend that you don't have assessments scheduled or due on consecutive weeks. All right, because then it denies the student of the opportunity to get feedback, to engage in some sort of reflective, deep level learning, to make amendments and so on before another assessment. So that's standard. All right, so we definitely do want to see proposals where you have week 3, something is due, and then week 4, something is due, and week 5, no, because, and then you have to keep in mind that the students are usually doing about 4 or 5 other courses besides yours. So you want to make sure that is considered. Very quickly, other resources, of course, the distinct graduate students, and the resources. This is, of course, where the library will come in. They will look at these things and ensure that they are equipped with the resources to, exactly, Diane, you are also teaching 4 or 5 courses, well, in some cases, along with other duties, correct? So, and of course, staffing requirements. So this goes into the vein of the financial aspect of it. And there's nothing much to say about this. I think this is self-explanatory, where you have to account for, who might be teaching the course or courses, or, in the program. If it's an internal thing, if it's something beyond the parameters of the department, or if you have to outsource outside of the country, for example, or a cross-campus situation. All right. And remember, I mentioned the budgetary or financial projections. All right. General information, just as we kind of wind down. When creating your proposal, it helps if you identify the point of contact. So we know who to address certain things to, and not, it doesn't go all over the place. And I think that brings us to the end. And just as I told you, you always want to recap your learning outcomes at the end of a particular learning experience. So you're now able to identify the steps in the program or course review process. You are also able to identify the components of course design or the approval template. And remember, I mentioned we broke them up into 3 different parts or segments, which include the administrative, the pedagogical, and the financial aspect of it. All right. We had a working document along the way where you created your course title, your course description, your course rationale, your learning outcomes, and so on. And of course, we looked at alignment of course components. So for example, your learning outcomes must inform your assessments. Yeah. So are there any, and we were taking questions along the way, but are there any additional questions?
I know at some point there was supposed to be a table of specs in the course outline. Is that still required?
The table of specs in the traditional sense in terms of the
detailed alignment of the
right. So what they have,
you don't need to do that again, right?
No, what they have done is kind of broken it up a little bit. So you have the table that would align, where you show alignment between the learning outcomes and the assessments, as I showed you.
Yes.
So that's one. That's actually the main one, to be quite honest.
That's the main one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And as long as we have that, that's okay.
Yes, and of course the calendar where you would show the different learning activities and the modules and so on. So it's kind of broken up into different components, but as opposed to a general traditional table of specs.
Okay, great.
All right, Virginia said, is it reasonable to anticipate that the lecturer will set the exam to evaluate the higher order learning outcomes when the course's learning objectives are at a lower level? The higher order learning outcomes are still the course learning, you mean the higher learning outcomes of the course, out of the course learning outcomes or objectives, correct? Virginia?
Yes, yes.
Right, that's perfectly fine. Yes, yes.
So is it necessary that we have to set the question paper with the higher order when the course outline, course learning objectives are at the lower level? Is it necessary?
Right. So I'm just making sure I'm very clear here. So if it is that you're saying that there's a distinction in your course learning outcomes between lower and higher order levels, and you want the final exam to focus on the higher order levels, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions? But let me say this as well, Virginia, I would assume that along the way, because you're not going to have a final exam for everything, you would probably orchestrate it or align it in such a way where certain in-course assessments will cater to certain high-ranking or higher order learning outcomes along the way. And the final exam, I would just suggest, is sort of an overview or, I wouldn't say general, but you be very strategic about it, that you're not going to save assessment of the higher order learning outcomes just for the final exam, because by that time you don't know what if the student fails the exam or doesn't, as we had in this discussion earlier. So you want to kind of fine tune it to, as Dr. Delisle said, samples, along the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem at all. All right, colleagues, I think we have had quite thank you so much. Quite a productive session, and I hope it definitely has helped clarify some things as it pertains to creating your course or program proposals and the process in general, the review and approval process. Mr. Garcia has also shared the link. I don't know if you could, right? Thank you once again, Mr. Garcia. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending and participating. And we definitely look forward. just in case you listen.
But Justin, just a quick one.
Yes,
I'm
sure.
really good. I found the session to be very helpful, and I
Thank
know
you so
your
much.
I know your emphasis was on the pedagogical side of things. But it
Mhm.
would be nice if we had a bursary person to help us
Yes.
through the financials in a little more detail.
Yes, in the next iteration of this session, what we're going to do is bring persons from the different stakeholders. Let me say it like that.
Right.
So we have persons from bursary, we have persons from grad studies, and different parts of it who can chime in. But because we wanted to squeeze so much in such a short time, and the session ended up being, I think we had 80 or more persons registered. We had to kind of strip it and take a different approach.
Okay.
All right, but next time what we'll do is break it down into smaller sessions. And because of the demand, we had to open it up. But it was really supposed to be just about 40 persons. And yes, it was double. So we had to kind of wind down or fine tune a bit. But in the next iteration of it, what we will do is probably do either part 1 or part 2 series or extend the time. All right.
Yeah, it would be nice to hear what their expectations are. Exactly.
Definitely. Thank you so much.